Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Common Chef here with Tom Castleman. Ready for another fun show? A lot to talk about today, man. We got NFL. One team is all in on their quarterback. Another, not so much. We're talking Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones, of course. Derek Carr to the Saints. So some NFL movement. NBA on the block. Kevin Durant looking great with the Suns. I don't know if I even told you about this, Tom, but I was at a Bucks-Sixers game over the weekend.
Wow.
So I want to talk about that because I was very impressed at James Harden. He looked really good, more like prime James Harden. So I want to talk about the East. Are the Sixers a contender along with the Bucks and Celtics? And then we'll talk about the Lakers, who without LeBron have won 2 games in a row. What in the world is going on? And, of course, college basketball, March Madness just around the corner. We've got Power 5, Power 6, I guess, for college hoops. Tournament action coming up. We'll go over all the major conferences, who's going to win the conference tournaments, as sort of a little, like, almost preview to March Madness. I cannot believe it's Selection Sunday this Sunday, Tom. Time flies. Next week, obviously, will be our full college basketball special. That will be the lead. But overall, a lot to talk about. Let's get right into it. I'm pumped for it. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Doing, I don't know if you'd say considerably better than Lamar Jackson, but I feel at least a bit more secure in my position, in my current role, in my profession.
Sure.
But then again, I'm also not getting paid $32 million for this trouble that I'm going to be facing. It's been a really interesting saga with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to this point where it's gone back and forth through media rumors, through varying reports. Is Lamar Jackson looking for a fully guaranteed contract a la Deshaun Watson and what he got from Cleveland? Is that not necessarily the case? I mean, I know that the one vocal owner in the NFL who came out strong against the fully guaranteed contract for Deshaun Watson was Steve Bisciotti, of course, the owner of the Baltimore Ravens. So we definitely have some competing philosophies here, to be certain. Franchise tag deadline came and went. No long-term deal between Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. And the Ravens, interestingly enough, there are 2 tags to which you can apply a franchise tag. There is the non-exclusive, which you're paying a lot more money. For quarterbacks, it was about $45 million this year. Or the non-exclusive, which means lesser sum of money, about 32.5, I think is the ballpark, for Lamar Jackson. And what that now allows is for other teams to make an offer sheet, which then the Ravens can match if they like the terms, or if they don't, that team has to surrender 2 first-round picks, and then they get to keep Lamar Jackson. And of course, in between all of this, teams can talk just straight up and down trades as well. So really, really interesting spot. I mean, we don't often, if ever, see a 26-year-old former MVP quarterback this available. And I say that in quotes because the Ravens, of course, can always match and keep them. But a really interesting, fascinating turn. Where do you want to go with this?
Well, first off, I'm going to say I might surprise you. Well, maybe I won't surprise you because, I'm going to say this is a great move for the Ravens. I mean, this pay your quarterback thing is getting out of hand. I mean, we'll talk about Danny Dimes in the next segment. I'm sure you'll know that I don't think he's worth $40 million. Look, Lamar Jackson, yes, he's a former MVP, although you could argue maybe he didn't deserve it. It was a weak year for MVP. I mean, again,
he threw like 35 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Like, he had an amazing year.
He hasn't been as good since. And
but he was MVP that one.
If you look at top quarterbacks today, he's not top 5. He's right on that edge of top 10, whether it's like 9, 10, 11 range. I mean, is that fair? Would you agree with that? It's maybe 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. I mean, like if he's healthy, though, and that's the big emphasis, if the man is healthy, it is now back-to-back seasons Lamar Jackson has gotten hurt. He's gotten hurt back-to-back years. I think they missed the playoffs the year before. This last year, they made it and lost right away. But clearly, look, Lamar maybe is a little bit better passer than we give him credit for. I know he doesn't have great targets, but let's be honest. Lamar Jackson is not a passing quarterback. That's not his forte. He's a really good player because he's a great runner and a solid passer who maybe doesn't turn the ball over, but consistently, is he going to light you up passing the ball? I mean, sure, if he gets better targets, he'll be better. But can he do what Patrick Mahomes did when Mahomes, his leg gets hurt and he can beat you from the pocket? I'm not buying Lamar Jackson from the pocket personally, Tom. So this is one of these deals. If he'd been healthy the last 2 years, they would feel better about paying him. But because he hasn't been healthy, because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I hate to make this example, but I mean, like RG3, Cam Newton, some of these running quarterbacks, what happened when they no longer had their legs? They declined. RG3 was out of the league. I mean, he was a backup for a while, but he wasn't like in the picture for a long time. So I think it's a great move for the Ravens. I mean, why would you invest all this guaranteed money in a guy who essentially is an injury away from having his career ended, a guy who hasn't been that available the last 2 seasons? Look, that's not his fault. Injuries are part of the game. But when you get back-to-back injuries, we saw what happened with Derrick Rose. Was Derrick Rose a fine player for the T-Wolves and Knicks? Yeah, he's a fine player, but he's not an MVP-level player after all those injuries. These injuries are adding up for Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's worth a big-time contract commitment. I mean, I don't think he should be a top 10 highest-paid quarterback in the NFL for me. And that's probably what the Ravens think. I think it's a great move. They're kind of daring him to test the market. And honestly, Tom, from what I've read so far, that's not to say this will change, but some of these other teams are not interested. The Ravens might be right. None of these other teams want to pay that much money for Lamar Jackson. So I know you talk about, is he a win with quarterback, a Super Bowl win because of, or a guy in the middle? And like, I'm not convinced Lamar Jackson is the guy to win you a Super Bowl. Now, you give him a great defense, you give him great guys around him, sure, he's capable of doing it. But if I was picking like 8, 9, maybe even 10 quarterbacks who I think can win me a Super Bowl, he's right about the 10, 11 range. And I get it. I get it. We've seen so much. Deshaun Watson got overpaid. We hate Kirk Cousins, not because Kirk Cousins is bad. I know he hasn't been good in the playoffs. We hate Kirk Cousins because he got overpaid. We don't like Danny Dimes right now because he got overpaid. Ravens are enough is enough. We've seen this happen before. What have the Vikings done with Kirk Cousins? They overpaid him. Look at how bad that roster is on defense. I mean, they got fortunate with Justin Jefferson in the draft, but otherwise the roster around Kirk Cousins, not good enough to win a championship. So actually good on the Ravens for franchise tagging Lamar Jackson. He hasn't been healthy the last few years. He's a running quarterback. I don't think he's worth a long-term commitment. Now, if he goes out there and proves it, Tom, maybe he's determined, maybe he works on things, maybe he has the best season of his career, they could still pay him the following year. But he's got to prove it. I love the move by the Ravens.
Yeah, to my mind, he's already proven that he's fairly easily a top 10 quarterback for me. I'm not going to put him top 5 because that is rarefied air, as we saw in the playoffs this past season.
But he's got one playoff win, right? I think he has one playoff win. Lamar,
yeah,
maybe?
but I'm not, you know me, I'm not one to really prescribe wins and losses to just one position, a quarterback.
Neither am I.
If you look at, like, say, the San Francisco 49ers, you can say, oh, this is their record with Brock Purdy. They were also 12-1 with Christian McCaffrey. If we're going to be assigning wins to different positions,
sure,
that kind of, talks about the impact of different players. But I think
we're
that
like
you can
5
definitely
seasons removed from his MVP season, though, Tom. A lot of the other players have gotten better. It was a weak MVP year. Mahomes got hurt that year. Had Mahomes been healthy, he would have won the MVP. Every once in a while, a guy gets a lot of things to work out in their favor.
No, absolutely. But
do you know how many goal line touchdown passes he had that year? By the way, we talk about touchdown passes. There was some stat that season he had the most touchdown passes inside the 10-yard line. What does that tell me? You're stat padding for your quarterback to get the MVP. I'm being serious, though. It is statistically one of the all-time worst MVP seasons that we've ever had. And that was 5 years ago. Are we going to go off a guy from 5 years ago? Let's give, guys who are past their prime. Let's give Russell Wilson even more money because he was great 5 years ago.
Yeah, but he never won an MVP. I mean, contracts and what you're going to get long-term is all about leverage. I mean, look at, the contract that Russell Wilson was able to get, the contract that Deshaun Watson was able to get.
Sure.
It was because that they had a ton of leverage over teams that committed a lot of draft capital to acquiring them in the first place. This is something where Lamar Jackson's in a little bit more of a tenuous situation because he doesn't quite have the same level of leverage. So it's not necessarily even about talent wise, does somebody deserve X, Y, or Z? It's what leverage do you have? The reason why Daniel Jones, we'll talk about later, Derek Carr, we'll talk about later, got the contracts that they got is because they had a certain amount of leverage over teams that otherwise would have quarterback questions.
Sure.
And the Ravens, I think, are playing a little bit of a dangerous game because, yeah, they were really competitive against the Cincinnati Bengals in that playoff game. You know what probably would have put them over the edge if Lamar Jackson had been their quarterback. And I understand injury, was why he wasn't. But what I'm saying is if he's off the roster completely, if you're rolling with Tyler Huntley, if you're rolling with somebody who's more of that mid to lower level pack of quarterback, might not be getting to the playoffs or having that opportunity where you're a goal line fumble away from perhaps, upsetting a division rival and completely rewriting what's happening in the AFC playoffs. So I think both sides are playing a little bit of a really high stakes game here where Lamar is looking for a really big contract because I think he's fighting that perception that is fairly common around the NFL that you're saying is that he is more of a runner. He is more likely to be hit and hurt when he's, outside the pocket.
It's valid though.
I will.
It's valid.
Tom Brady missed an entire year getting hit in the pocket. I mean, like quarterbacks get injured at various positions. I mean, Brock Purdy injured, where did he get hit? In the pocket. I mean, we saw two quarterbacks knocked out in the NFC title game in the pocket. And I think that the way that the NFL is going with offense, we saw it with the Philadelphia Eagles. You can build a legit potent offense that is capable of winning a Super Bowl around a quarterback who is, if not run first, at least 50-50. I'd say
Jalen Hurts is already a better passer than Lamar ever has been. You watch that Super Bowl, tell me ever. Jalen Hurts right now, better passing quarterback than Lamar Jackson.
To A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I mean, who's the best guy? His passes were
so clean.
Yeah, well, I'm saying
Lamar misses open passes way too often. Like I get what you're saying, but I think Jalen Hurts is a better passing quarterback than Lamar Jackson.
I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is that Lamar Jackson is the best quarterback available in the market right now, in the free agent already established NFL player market right now. And so, teams have to decide if they want to.
Is he? Is he though? Is Aaron Rodgers? Is Aaron Rodgers better? Maybe.
I would take Lamar Jackson over Aaron Rodgers.
Short term. For short term. You're taking Lamar Jackson over Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely. Not even a question in my mind. I mean,
it's a debate for me.
Contractual cost is about the same. You have a younger, more dynamic player in Lamar Jackson. My thoughts are most likely he's going to end up back with the Ravens just because they have so much control around him. And quite frankly, that feels like it might be the best fit because they build so much of their offense around him. But a couple other landing spots could be potentially really interesting. I mean, look at Atlanta, what they might be able to do, considering the weapons that they have. Drake London, Kyle Pitts on rookie contracts. You bring in Lamar Jackson, you can afford to pay him. You can actually have a pretty solid team. I mean, look what they did with Marcus Mariota as their quarterback. Lamar Jackson is at least 10x Marcus Mariota. And then another team, is all NFC South.
Sure.
Carolina Panthers could be really interesting if they wanted to make that deal. And we know David Tepper, their owner, really wants to get a franchise quarterback. So I think there is a solid market for Lamar Jackson. Probably ends up with the Ravens ultimately. But he's Kyle
Pitts and Drake London have to prove it to me. They're young players. They haven't proven it enough yet, Tom.
They'll prove it if they have Lamar Jackson as their quarterback.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that because it's Lamar Jackson, the runner.
He can throw to. I'm not saying he's the best passer, but
not as good as Jalen Hurts for me. Passing the ball.
No, but that's built into me saying that he is between 6 and 10
than Mariota. I guess that's fair. He's better than Mariota.
Oh, he's way better than Mariota. Like what I'm saying with all these arguments is that it's baked in for me that he is between 6 and 10 in that quarterback ranking, probably closer to like 7, 8, 9 for me.
And I've got him like 9, 10, 11 range. So you've got him definitely higher than I have him personally. Yeah. Okay. Well,
but do you think he ends up back in Baltimore, or do you see him ending up in some other spot where somebody's either going to pay him the money and sign the offer sheet that the Ravens don't match?
I think people agree with me.
Trade.
They agree with me. We've seen it. The guy hasn't been healthy the last 2 years. No one's going to pay him that money, Tom. I mean, do you agree with me that the Ravens made the right move for now, not to commit long term?
I agree that they made the right move with the franchise tag. I'm not sure if the non-exclusive was the best
13 million is a
option.
lot. This is a message to Lamar. The message to Lamar is you're not going to hold our organization hostage. You need to go out there and prove yourself, and you need to go out there and be available. It's a message to Lamar Jackson. That's exactly why they gave him the 32, not the 45. It's a message that, look, man, you better recognize who you are. You're not a top 5 quarterback today. Because of that MVP he got a few years back, he's acting like he's a top 5 quarterback. He is not a top 5 quarterback. So, sorry, Lamar. Great move by the Ravens. Sorry, bud. Maybe you should get an agent. That might help him out a little bit.
I think that smooths things out. I think that makes the process a lot cleaner if you have an agent, quite frankly. I mean, there's a lot of people in different industries who talk about
the like importance. A family member, his agent, his mom or his brother or something like that?
Maybe.
I can't remember exactly. It's like a family member and him are like his agent. He doesn't have a professional agent.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Which I mean, I think that's a mistake, not necessarily like I think that's a mistake. A bit of a mistake. Yeah.
It's a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Call it what it is.
Somebody who does have an agent and
a good one.
And a good one. Quite the bag. Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones in New York.
Oh my God.
Securing was 160 million, like 82 of it guaranteed, something along those lines. I mean, I tell you this much. If I'm offering that level of contract to a player, I absolutely would pick Lamar Jackson over Daniel Jones because they're, believe it or not, pretty similar. Where they're both a little bit more toward the run first, 50-50 split on where their effectiveness comes from. I mean, we're talking about Daniel Jones, who had one really good playoff game against a pretty fluky, pretty suspect Minnesota Vikings team, and then
atrocious defense,
equally horrendous against the Philadelphia Eagles. So, I mean, did New York have to make this move? I'm going to say it was a slightly smart move for this reason. It allowed them to use the franchise tag on Saquon Barkley, where running back is even more of a fickle, injury-riddled position than quarterback is. And the discussions were on Saquon Barkley. I know this is a Daniel Jones segment, but Saquon was looking probably closer to that Christian McCaffrey 16 million per. Giants were saying, hey, we want more close to 12. They couldn't really meet in the middle, somewhere around 14. So they say, you know what, franchise tag this star running back, 10 million a year, very reasonable price for one of the top running backs in the game.
Yeah.
Well, but he was really good this past season in his rookie year. So this is like the quintessential, like, okay, let's see if you can do this, one more year. And if not, we don't have to sign you long-term, that sort of thing. And of course they can still work out a longer-term extension with Saquon. So I think the only really good reason to sign Daniel Jones to this type of deal is because it allows you to have that flexibility to just extend the window with Saquon Barkley. I mean, there's two types of teams in the NFL. Ones that have quarterbacks that they know they can win with and ones that don't. And it kind of feels like the Giants are straddling that line because I don't know which quarterback Daniel Jones constitutes as.
Yeah, but the gut feeling is he's the one that's don't. Now, it's very tricky with Daniel Jones because he was good this last season, but not great. They won because of defense and Saquon and offensive line and the coach
Variance,
and luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and winning close games. But look, I get it. You got to pay your quarterback. I get that. But right now, Tom Castor, I looked it up before the show.
Mm-hmm.
He is tied for the 7th highest salary per million of quarterbacks heading into this next season. He is making just under what Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are making. A few $1 million less than those guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's tied for the 7th with Dak Prescott, by the way, who Dak has multiple Pro Bowls. I know Dak is on the way down. I'm not as high on Dak as you are, but Dak Prescott has at least proven to be a solid quarterback in the league. He's had multiple seasons of good years. This last year was not that, but he didn't get this deal before last. It wasn't based on this last year. Danny Dimes has not done anything in the league yet. Again, obviously, he doesn't have the targets. I get that. But how is he the 7th highest paid quarterback in the NFL? Tied for the 7th highest. I think it's with Dak, and I think Matt Stafford is right there as well. I mean, that's insane. Danny Dimes, look, even if Danny Dimes ends up being good, I think we can agree that he's somewhere in the average like quarterback in the NFL, somewhere in that like 15 range. Maybe if all works out, you might put him in like that 12, 13 range. Maybe we'll see. No one's got him as top 10. No one's got him top 10. I've never heard anyone say Daniel Jones is a top 10 quarterback, except for maybe going into the draft. He's the 7th highest paid quarterback. I get the contracts are different now. I get some of it depends on when you got a guy. The 7th high. I'm sorry, man. No, this is a terrible move, Tom. Find me another team in the NFL, except for maybe the Minnesota Vikings. Even them, though. Kirk Cousins isn't paid this much. $40 million for Daniel Jones. I mean, get out of here. What has this guy done? He's not top 10 in any category. He's got one playoff win. Is that the only playoff appearance he had? I mean, he's not among the best quarterbacks in any category. QBR, passer rating, he's turnover prone. They paid way too much. I know they want to make a statement. I know they like him as a person. I know they want to give him a chance. The only thing that's good about this deal is that it's 4 years. Like Mahomes, obviously, 10 years. We see some 6-8 year deals. That's the only good thing about this deal. It's 4 years. So in 4 years, we'll know whether he's the guy. But given based on what he's done, they could have told him, look, Danny Dimes, we'll get you at 30, 35, and they can work something out. But $40 million, it's just way too much for a guy who hasn't done anything in this league.
Well, so a little bit of context on the contract and how it structures. I'm on spotrac.com, which breaks out how it's broken out.
Sure.
That 4th year, it balloons up to about $56.5 million as his cap hit, with about $9 million as dead cap money. So the way that they've kind of structured everything, they can kind of get out of that last deal, which brings down that average annual value. I mean, NFL teams do this all the time with contracts. I think that what the Giants are aiming to do is say, hey, we'd rather not try to go find a quarterback because it's just really hard, really expensive to try and do that. And you might swing and miss. He had a, decent year under Brian Daboll, who is famous for making Josh Allen a much better quarterback. And we might be seeing kind of the inverse of that a little bit, where Josh Allen wasn't quite as good as he was in years prior. How much of that is the play caller? How much of that is the player? That's the sort of thing that I think we'll have a better sense of throughout this upcoming season, because
or the injury he had as well.
Injury as well, but it's going to be okay. It was what's real, what's the fluke with a type of player like Josh Allen, and I think we're going to see a similar type of thing with Daniel Jones. Is can Brian Daboll get more out of him over this short-term contract, or is it going to be the sort of thing where Giants have to eat it for a couple of years, and then it might be painful in 2025, $18 million of dead cap if they cut or trade him. But if they need to make that sort of aggressive move to try to find quarterback of the future,
who's going to pick him up in a trade, though, Tom? Come on.
Well,
that amount of money.
No, I know. Like, trade would be incredibly unlikely, type of scenario, but most likely cut. But I throw a trade in because that could non-zero chance of happening. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't really. I have to take the cost element out of it for me. Like, they secured a quarterback that they believe can help them win. They didn't have to give up draft capital to do so. They maintained flexibility to build a roster up around him. I'm fine with the move, I suppose. It's better than trying to jump in all these other sweepstakes with all these other teams. I don't think it's going to work out for them, but I get the logic. I get why they made them.
Fine if you get the logic. I mean, I know what you're saying, but it's just too much, man.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact money the organization has. Maybe they have more cap space than most teams. Maybe Contract Castle will look it up. But just $40 million for Daniel Jones, that's all I need to know. That's just too much. That's enough said. Enough said.
Well, a quarterback who got a somewhat similar deal is Derek Carr, who's actually going to the New Orleans Saints, who are famous around the league for having cap issues and yet never really seeming to face any repercussions or not be able to make certain moves because of their cap situation. So basically, Derek Carr is in a fairly similar situation to Daniel Jones, where we're looking at 5 years, $150 million, averaging out at about 37 and a half per year. But again, there's some balloon years toward the back end of that deal. Carr, more of a traditional pocket passer than the previous two quarterbacks we discussed. Also considerably older, whereas those guys are 26, 27. Carr's 32. Going to the New Orleans Saints, a team that has, I'd say, a pretty solid roster of like win now talent, but does Derek Carr put them over the top, or at least put them over the top to winning the division? I don't know if Super Bowl's on the table for this team.
Yeah, and the question for me too is, can you actually win a playoff game? Because he's never won one, by the way. So a lot depends on what happens. Like, I know you're talking about their talent, but like Michael Thomas is really talented, but he hasn't played. So if Michael Thomas is healthy, okay, that's a big if. I know Alvin Kamara has some legal troubles. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens there. So if you told me I'll have these two guys for 17 games, I would say maybe they win the division, but I'm not buying them to win a playoff game. I mean, that's the worst division in football, the NFC South. So, I mean, I think any other division, I'd say no chance. Only because it's the South, they have a chance there. I mean, Chris Olave is good, but some of their main targets, there's a lot of question marks around them. So, I mean, I think Derek Carr got overpaid too, to be honest, but at least he got paid less than Daniel Jones. You know, so
yeah.
He's not enough to make them a legitimate contender of any means. If things go right, they can win the division. I really have to sit down and look at rosters closely as far as who the favorite is. It really depends on what the Bucks do at the quarterback spot. Because if the Bucks can get a decent quarterback, I still think that's the best roster in the NFC South. So I would probably pick the Bucks. I don't know if Kyle Trask is the answer. I covered Kyle Trask in college, by the way. He looked pretty good against Mizzou. I don't think he's a terrible option. I don't know if he's enough of an option to win the division. We'll see.
He's a tank commander. He's the guy you roll with if you want Caleb Williams or Drake May next year.
No, the Bucks roster is way too good to have that bad of a record.
They're
in that weak
division talent.
Talent like Leonard Fournette, who was terrible this last season.
Donovan Smith, their left tackle, they're letting him go. Jamel Dean, they didn't franchise tag, so he's likely gone. Like I could see them dropping talent and not being all that great for next year.
There's still a lot of talent on that roster, man. There's still, I mean, weak division. I don't know. I don't know who the favorite is in that division. I don't know what's going to happen. I think the Saints have a chance because I would still put it, I might put the Saints as a slight favorite, but I would put them at under 50% chance to win the division. I think if they win the division, they're not making a run. Derek Carr's not winning a playoff game there. I mean, if the ball bounces the right way, maybe a pick, tip ball goes for a pick six for the Saints defense, maybe. But all this does for Derek Carr is give him a fresh change of scenery, a fresh team. But he's not putting them over the top. I mean, this team, they were in the playoffs a couple years ago. They're not like so far removed from being a playoff team. I mean, if Sean Payton was there, maybe he can do a little bit more magic with Derek Carr, maybe. But I don't think the Saints they might win a game or two more. They might be improved. I think Derek Carr is better than Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston, but not much better. I mean, the best version of him is better, but he's inconsistent like all those guys too. So this is going to be another one of those years where Derek Carr is not going to win anything in the playoffs. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true.
Yeah, this is a meh move for me. Exactly. I mean, we're looking at a Saints team that in some draft day deals last season traded this year's first round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles, for which the Eagles say thank you very much. The Saints do have a first round pick in that trade with Sean Payton sending their coach to Denver, but it's a late first round pick. So this move kind of screams to me, the Saints know that they're kind of stuck in no man's land. They're not Super Bowl contenders, but with the roster that they have, they're not really going to be tanking all that much. And they're not going to be able to find a young slash long-term answer at quarterback in the draft, given that you got to pay a whole lot of capital to move up from 29 to get one of these top four guys. And after the top four guys in this draft, there's a huge delta before you get to anybody else who's kind of a pro prospect, a type of guy. So I think this is the Saints simply paying the piper to say, hey, any given Sunday or Thursday or Monday, we might be able to have the ball bounce our way, pick up a couple of wins, win a division title, get a home playoff game. That's revenue. That's money in the bank for a rabid fan base like New Orleans. So this feels kind of like we're treading water. It doesn't scream Super Bowl. It barely screams NFC South to me. It does scream, hey,
agreed,
competitive, wild card. We're going to be in the chase, the entire season, and we'll see what happens type of thing. So that's where this move falls for me. I mean, ideally, I would like it to be a shorter term move if I'm the New Orleans Saints, but I also understand for cap purposes, they may have just had to make it a 4-year deal just in order to make this sort of move so that they're not rolling out there with Andy Dalton again, because Derek Carr is a marked improvement over an Andy Dalton, even a Jameis Winston, as far as a quarterback talent goes. So this is, this is the price of doing business in the NFL. Not a super huge fan of the move, but I get it, I guess.
Yeah, doesn't make me as angry as Danny Dimes move. That's what I'll say.
Well, one move that certainly looks to be paying off, at least in the short run. We'll see how this kind of breaks out longer term as we move over to the NBA. Kevin Durant making a long-awaited debut, and I believe his home debut is going to be tonight for Phoenix Suns.
Sir.
3-0 since Durant started playing, 2 blowouts and a close win. Booker and Durant both really streaky, good, talented scorers. They're both rolling as of right now. What are you more buying? This is just kind of a hot start as it's really talented guys playing in the regular season, or do you think that come playoff time, this is going to be a problem team that's going to be coming out of the West potentially?
You worded that really well, Tom. I'll tell you what, you put that really well, because regular season and playoffs is different. It is different. With that said, I'm leaning more towards this is going to be a problem. I mean, we'll never know for sure, but I'm leaning towards that the Suns are a problem right now. 3-0 with Durant and Booker playing together. Durant in those 3 games, 10 of 15 shooting, 7 of 10, 12 of 17. The guy's barely missed a shot, averaging 27 a game. He even played 40 minutes in that last game, so it shows that he's healthy. Booker averaging 36 and 56% from the field. Actually, Durant is letting Booker shoot more right now, which is something he's done in his career before. By the way, Durant is willing to let other guys shoot. 3-0 with the 14-point win at the Hornets, 21-point win at the Bulls, then a 4-point road win at the Mavs, which, by the way, Durant did get the shot at the end of the game. So he was letting Booker shoot, but game on the line, you go to KD, the man does what he usually does. He delivers. So other thing to note is these are all road wins. I know not the hardest schedule by any means, but they're all road wins. So winning on the road is important. So yeah, I think this team could be a problem, man. Honestly, if both of these guys are rolling, it makes it harder to double team these guys. I mean, Chris Paul, by the way, is still a pretty good 3rd or 4th option. He can knock down an open shot. DeAndre Ayton down low. He'll go one-on-one and post up and score on you. It makes it very hard to double someone. Who do you double? I mean, you got Durant, you got Booker, you got CP3, you got DeAndre Ayton out there on the court. It's a dangerous team. I'm a little split, honestly, because, I mean, I've got the Bucks. I picked the Bucks when we did our midseason segment. I think I picked the Bucks in the preseason. It was either them or the Warriors. I can't remember, but Warriors still have a shot, by the way. In the playoffs, that team is different.
Sure.
But I think the Suns are the favorite in the West for me. There's just something about the Bucks' depth and their experience and them having played together, them having been in that final setting a couple years ago, that still makes me maybe lean the Bucks. But I'm kind of starting. They keep going this way. My mind might be changing, Tom. I definitely think the Suns are for real. I definitely think they're a problem. I definitely think you put Durant and Booker on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary, man. That's a scary duo. And they could rest, by the way. They could take a possession off knowing the other guy could ISO and rest. Chris Paul doesn't have to be the number 2 scorer. He can be the number 3 scorer. We saw Chris Paul play great in the playoffs a couple years ago. By the finals, the man was spent. He does not have to be spent this time around with those 2 guys on his squad. Durant, by the way, really, really good on defense, too. He's one of the best defensive players in the league this year. So that's a good addition to their defense, too. I think the Suns are a problem.
Yeah, I think Suns are going to be a problem. I mean, currently they're sitting 4th in the West, 10 games back of the Denver Nuggets, who just built up this massive, massive lead. But the next 2 teams behind them, the Sacramento Kings and the Memphis Grizzlies, are 7.5 back of first place. That's just 2.5 ahead of the Phoenix Suns. I definitely see Phoenix coming out of the West as the 2 seed when the playoffs roll around. Especially when we're considering what's going on with Ja Morant and the Grizzlies and Sacramento, kind of feels a little bit fluky.
No one trusts them.
This is the sort of thing where I would fade both of these teams down the stretch, and absolutely. I think I'm closer to this being regular season dominance, kind of like you got that fresh start. You've got this pep in your step because you've got Kevin Durant, arguably the best scorer in the NBA, perhaps the best scorer in this NBA generation, just because of all the different ways that he can attack an opposing defense. And then, their road wins, but you mentioned 2 out of the 3 teams in the Bulls and the Hornets currently, neither of them in the play-in scenario. And then Dallas, I mean, that's another team about whom I have questions. I mean, this is definitely a Phoenix Suns team where how are you going to stop them from getting to 120, 125 every single night? Because they're certainly capable of getting to that point. But as we saw against a good offensive team in Dallas and considerably better than Chicago or Charlotte, they're probably going to let you get to 120, 126. These are going to be a lot of high-scoring games, a lot of take the over type of stuff in these Phoenix Suns games. And I can't really discount a little bit of ageism or injuryism, rather. I mean, we've seen Chris Paul have to miss time just because, quite frankly, old man injuries, hammies, quads.
Durant's missed time too.
Up. Durant, the exact same thing. So that's something that's going to be a fairly big impediment, or not impediment so much as a concern for the Phoenix Suns. So right now I'm leaning more regular season dominance, where you just have super great talent that's going to carry you on a given night against some really meh kind of teams. But once we start getting into 7-game series where you have somebody who is focusing a game plan on you every single night, of course, there's going to be adjustments. And of course, the Suns have plenty of talent to overcome those sorts of game plans. I'm not quite convinced that they're like NBA title favorites. I certainly think they're Western Conference Western Conference championship bound for sure.
You got the Nuggets ahead of them still, right?
I have the Nuggets ahead of them. And going to the Eastern Conference, I would say Bucks, Celtics are right there. And probably let's throw in the 76ers, a team that really hasn't gotten as much love on the show. I mean, I think preseason I had Boston, you had Milwaukee. Midway through the season, I think we were pretty much right there with that. But, you got the in-person scouting report up in Milwaukee. That's a nice little road trip for Chicagoans who can swing a weekend or something along those lines. But currently 76ers sitting squarely in 3rd place, a game and a half back of Boston for the 2 seed, 3 games ahead of Cleveland for the 4 seed. And I would say pretty firmly entrenched as that 3rd team that I could see coming out of the East. And then that's kind of the shelf for me, at least. Yeah. I think that we can put Philadelphia in that top 3 of teams to come out of the East. I think there's 3 in the East, 2 in the West. Philly's making some noise.
I have 3 in the West. I think the Warriors in the West, when the playoffs come around, are pretty dangerous. But I actually think the 76ers are a legitimate contender, too. Couple quick notes about that road trip. So, you know me, I want to watch all my favorite players all time. For basketball, I've already seen LeBron, Curry. I hadn't seen Giannis in person yet. Figured let's see him at his own house. Unfortunately, on the way back, we had a flat tire. It was actually my girlfriend's car. The bolts were in too tight where we couldn't even get the tire. The guy, we had to call AAA or roadside assistance, bring out the drill. Got home at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Ooh.
So it was not the greatest road trip. It was a fun game. Found out the halftime show was done by a Bulgarian, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Christian with his dog Scooby. Fantastic halftime act. So it was a Bulgarian watching a Bulgarian. As for the game, I was, and I don't know if it's one of these like turn the clock back type games or if this is something we'll see in the playoffs. I was blown away by James Harden. I mean, it looked like MVP level James Harden. My girlfriend hates him, by the way, and I get it because he flopped his way to a lot of calls.
Okay, so it's the same thing I don't like. Yeah,
it's the same thing no one likes about James Harden. It works, though. The man flops his way to the free throw line. Scott Foster was refereeing, and James Harden got every call. And probably the Bucks probably should have won the game had Harden not gotten all those free throws. 3-point game. I think the Bucks hit a late 3, though. They made it 3. It was really 6, but James Harden did whatever he wanted to do. He made a lot of threes. He had some great assists. He went where he wanted on the floor, looked in complete control of the game. Right now, James Harden, in theory, he's the 3rd best player on the court in that game, right? Giannis Embiid, and then Harden. If you didn't know who the best player on the court was and you were watching that game, you would have walked away and said, this is the best player on the court, James Harden. And the fact that he did that, that makes the Sixers dangerous. That makes them very dangerous. Tyrese Maxey, by the way, they might have a big 3 there. Tyrese Maxey, very good basketball player, looked really good as well. So, yeah, I'm still going to pick the Bucks because the other thing I walked away from that game is that Harden and Embiid and Maxey played their best. Giannis had a lot of points and rebounds, but had some turnovers coming off an injury. Chris Middleton played terrible. So Milwaukee was right there despite not playing their best game. Philly played their very best. So Milwaukee's depth, I mean, Brook Lopez, they've got Connaughton, they got guys off the bench, Carter, Jay Crowder now is on that team, Grayson Allen, Joe Ingles, Bobby Portis. I mean, you can go on and on and on. That is the deepest team maybe I've ever seen in the NBA. I mean, they have so many really good players. They have one great player, maybe 2 very good in Holiday and Middleton when Middleton's healthy. But their team is so deep. So I'm still leaning Milwaukee as my favorite. But I'm getting a little torn between Boston and Philly. Boston has to be up there. They were in the finals last year. Jason Tatum's better this year. They're on a little bit of a skid right now, though Boston is. So I do think it's a 3-team race. One injury here, one injury there. That's why the Bucks, by the way, are in the best spot because they have the deepest team. They're most fit to have an injury and still deliver. I mean, if it's Giannis, they're not winning, obviously. But if it's someone other than Giannis, they have a lot of guys who could step right in and almost feel like you don't miss a beat. So I'm still leaning Milwaukee in the East. But if the 76ers made the finals, I would not be the least bit surprised. The biggest thing for them is health. And you look at last season, Embiid got hurt in the playoffs. Last season, Embiid and Harden, first time playing together. These guys playing together now is dangerous. And Embiid, by the way, is the leading scorer, and Harden's okay with that. Harden had like 20 assists the other night. Harden's okay leading the league in assists. He doesn't have to be the leading scorer, but if he gets hot like he did the other night, he can be on a given night. But their duo is pretty good. You actually watch that game, Harden is consistent looking for Embiid all the time. He's like, how can I get Joel the ball? So it's a very dangerous team, the Sixers. It is a legitimate 3-team race. I put it like 50% Bucks for me, 25 Sixers, 25 Celtics, as far as how likely is each one to come out of the East for me.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I have an even closer split. I think these teams are all really, really even, where it might be gonna do the math completely wrong.
Maybe 40-30-30. I'll change it.
Yeah, like something along those lines is what I'm thinking. Yeah, that 2-man game looks great. This is kind of what we were hoping or expecting to see last season when there was that big trade between the Jets and the 76ers. But of course, even with great players, it can take a little bit of time for things to gel. And we're seeing James Harden finally being in a spot where I think he feels appreciated for the type of player that he is. I mean, nobody is a bigger stand for James Harden in the NBA than Daryl Morey, who got him to Houston. Then Morey left Houston, is now in Philadelphia, and James Harden has been fighting his way to Philadelphia ever since. You know, greatest strength that Joel Embiid and James Harden have is that they know their roles. They know what they're good at. They know how to play off of each other really, really well. I agree. You know, health and consistency is going to be the biggest thing, because the key difference is that for James Harden, it's been a minute since his MVP seasons, and while he is capable of greatness, we also see some games where he puts up some duds on occasion. And I think he does that a little bit more often than other like stars to superstars, contemporaries in that echelon for him. So I would say, yeah, they're right up there as like that third team, solidly third team, but they're definitely knocking on the door of being one of the top two, because they're all playing really, really well at this rate. So I'm with
and
you.
they're winning road games. They're 13-3 in their last 16 road games.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick Philadelphia over Boston and Milwaukee, but they're getting close enough where, again, like you're saying, I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm getting close to picking them over Boston. I'm torn.
Game and a half back in that division.
Yeah, I'm torn.
Back.
I could see him being Boston. I mean, I think that's a better 1-2 duo than Tatum and Brown for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Boston might have better overall depth. Although Maxey might be better than Boston's number 3. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. They're trending in maybe being number 2 for me. We'll see.
Playoff seeding is going to be super important. Who gets that crucial game 7 at home? Although 76ers, like you said, with the way they're playing on the road, that might not be the advantage that it typically is in the postseason. One team currently that is going to be playing on the road if the playoffs were to start today is the LA Lakers, who out without LeBron for a couple of weeks before he gets reevaluated for a foot injury. That kind of tells me that depending on how the Lakers season goes, we might not be seeing LeBron the rest of the season. But so far, the Lakers are making a pretty good case to convince him to come back and play through. Even if he's not necessarily at 100%, winning 2 games in a row. They're currently sitting in the 9th spot in the Western Conference. They are 2 games out of being in the playoffs solidly and one of those top 6 teams. They're also a half game to a game out from the next 1, 2, 3, 4 teams.
It's messy
behind them. It's
messy.
a messy situation in the bottom of the West, and it's because that they're the LA Lakers that we're even talking about a team that, quite frankly, might not make the automatic playoffs that is going to be playing in this play-in situation. Do they continue their winning ways without LeBron? And if so, do they have any chance of making noise come April, May, June?
A lot of it is due to seeding, Tom. So first off, yes, they're gonna make it. And I think, well, let me put this: if Anthony Davis stays healthy, because if Anthony Davis gets hurt, then this is all gonna unravel completely. But they've been really bad without LeBron this season, record-wise. But some of that has been due to the fact that Davis hasn't played in those games either, or he hasn't been 100%. Anthony Davis looks as good health-wise as we've seen him in the last 2 years right now. You look at this month so far, Davis averaging in the last 3 games 36 points, 12 rebounds, 58% shooting, 44% from 3. They've got back-to-back wins with them. So they've got one of the easiest schedules in the NBA down the stretch, by the way. Some of their upcoming games without LeBron, they played the Raptors, the Knicks, the Pelicans, the Rockets, the Mavericks, and the Magic. Knicks game, okay, that might be tough, but the Raptors aren't great. The Pelicans aren't great. The Rockets are miserable. The Magic are miserable. The Mavs, I mean, they should be good, but they're not that good. And then they play afterwards. They play OKC, the Bulls twice. The Bulls are terrible. OKC's terrible. They have the Suns, which is a tough game. They have a lot of home games coming up as well. If their schedule wasn't so easy, I know NBA schedule is hard to compare because I know at any given night, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But still, you would prefer to have the easy schedule. They've got an easy schedule where they could hold on without LeBron. If they go like 500, which is reasonable with that schedule, I mean, they're slightly under 500 right now. You don't have to be 7-8 games over to get the 10 seed. You could be a 500 squad to get a 9 or 10 seed. And in the play-in tournament, if LeBron and Davis are there, I'm taking the Lakers, no question. As far as can they make noise, it really depends on the seeding. Because I don't know that they could beat the Nuggets. They can, but they probably won't. But I'll put it out there. If they get the 7 seed and it is the Grizzlies
Suns
potentially without, if Phoenix Suns get the 2 seed like you're saying, then they might be in trouble. But if the Kings or the Grizzlies stay in that 2 seed, Grizzlies potentially without Ja Morant. I don't know what's going to happen there, but let's just put it out there. What if Ja Morant doesn't play in the playoffs? The Kings, I'm sorry, Tom. I'm not picking the Kings to beat LeBron James.
Oh, I'm not either.
In the playoff series. So,
okay.
Yeah. If they get the matchup where they play the Kings or Grizzlies in the first round, I would pick the Lakers to win the playoff series. I think there's still too many holes in that squad. I don't think they're going to win the finals. I mean, again, I look at I think the Suns and Nuggets are clearly better teams. I would put the Warriors a little bit ahead of them as well. So I don't think they're going to make the finals, but they could win a series in the playoffs, maybe 2 if the matchups go right. And that's a big if, though, because if they get the Suns, different story. So, but yeah, give me the Lakers to make the playoffs. They'll be right there. LeBron will come back. He'll push them over the top, and they'll be in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's kind of hard when you have a couple of great talents like LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and you even have D'Angelo Russell, who kind of fits in as a nice third piece. It's kind of hard to count out. Kind of hard to count you out. That's future Hall of Famer Russell Westbrook to you. It's kind of hard to count out the Lakers just because the bottom of the West is so chaotic and you have so many flawed teams. By the way, this is going to be a conversation topic for another time. Sacramento Kings might be the first underdog 3 seed or something like that. It's crazy how no matter what matchup they get, even money for them to advance out of the first round, which is not something we usually see in the NBA playoffs. But yeah, I don't have any disagreement about the Lakers. I think that they're capable enough just because not necessarily because they're that good, just like the rest of the bottom of the West is just kind of sitting in the same malaise. So the Lakers, they'll get in, they'll do something, it'll be great. Moving on to considerably more exciting basketball, because we talk about a lot more things than the last place team in the Pacific Division of the NBA. We've got, of course, the conference tournaments. We've already had some of the smaller ones, some of the single bid qualifiers coming through. But now, of course, we've got a lot of the big tournaments that are going to be coming up this week and this weekend, leading right up to Selection Sunday, just a few days away.
Ooh, baby.
We will start with probably the most local for us of the conferences. We've got the Big Ten tournament coming up in Chicago. Purdue as the 1 seed. So we'll keep this kind of on the short side of things. We'll go more in depth with some of the top teams as we get into the NCAA tournament. But is Purdue going to remain as the favorite for you, Common, or do you have somebody else surprising the Boilermakers?
Yeah, I think Purdue's the favorite. It's a very interesting conference because there was 9 teams in the Big Ten who are between 12-8 and 10-10 in conference play, and 2 more were 9-11. So this is one of the most bunched up leagues in college basketball history. But the one team clearly ahead of the pack, Purdue 15-5, 26-5 overall. They've got the Big Ten Player of the Year, Zach Edey, 7'4", 295 pounds, averaging 22 points and 13 rebounds a game. I've got the Boilermakers winning the Big Ten. The one team that could give them trouble, the Indiana Hoosiers. Indiana beat them twice in the regular season. Both matchups, speaking of great big men, Trace Jackson Davis, that's a big man who could cross you up off the dribble, spin moves left and right. Now, he's fantastic. Edey and Davis, by the way, are 2 guys who maybe aren't going to be, whoa, as I'm dropping my mic, who maybe aren't going to be NBA stars, Tom, because they don't have that outside shooting game. But as far as the college game, these are two of the very best big men in the game. So I like Purdue, but Indiana could give them a run for their money. But it is tough to beat the same team 3 times. They play a third time. Boiler up, baby. Boiler up.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Purdue Boilermakers as well. I mean, it's kind of tough to argue against the novelty of a 7'4" center, somebody who, kind of fits a bit of a strange niche where, hey, this is going to be a really good college big man who we're not really sure what role he is going to have at the next level as an NBA player. But hey, for the college game, he gets to come out, he gets to dominate against, usually dominate, I should say, against much smaller competition. So I'm going to go with Purdue as well. I mean, they have to play just a couple games just to even get to the Big Ten championship. There's going to be a lot of chaos in the bracket before it even gets to that point. So give me Purdue as well. Moving to a conference that is near and dear to us with alma mater Mizzou, the 4 seed.
MIZ.
Is Gates going to get these guys to the conference final comment, or do you see somebody else coming out?
My goodness. Has Gates been a godsend for Mizzou or what? You know this. I covered Mizzou basketball from 2018 to 2020. I've watched actually a decent amount of Mizzou games. I'm off Saturdays at work. I've gotten to catch about 3, 4, 5 Tiger games this year, and their style of play is miles different. It's kind of more of that fastest 40 frenetic style we had when Mike Anderson was the coach when we were in college, and they did it a little bit under Frank Haith as well. Konzo Martin, by the way, who I covered when he was at Mizzou, great human being, really did a lot to get the best out of his players off the court, but on the court, they were boring. They were play defense, low-scoring games. Mizzou games now were up and down, jack up threes and make them, high-scoring games, a lot of fun. With that said, as much as I want to pick Mizzou, they're very up and down. They're very streaky. One game they're great, the next they're terrible. So over a tournament setting, I don't know if they could put together enough good games in a row. So I'm going to say no to Mizzou. Now, some of the other favorites are Kentucky, who got off to a terrible start. They've got the big man Shibwe. Speaking of another guy who's a great college player, maybe not a great NBA player, but Kentucky did get better. I think they're still behind, though. You look at Alabama, 16-2 in conference, Texas A&M 15-3. Those are the top dogs in the SEC this year. As much as it pains me to say this, because like you, I probably agree that Brandon Miller should not be playing, given the involvement with the gun that he provided to a guy who shot a woman. I mean, I know we talked about this last week, but he is playing, and whatever you think of his actions, and by the way, he's a young guy. I'm not saying this man can't come back from this. Everyone deserves a second chance, but everyone should also be held accountable. He's not being held accountable, but he is the best player in the SEC. He is a future lottery pick, and he's got really good players around them. Alabama was the best team in this conference the whole season. It's Alabama basketball on top of the SEC, not Alabama football and Nick Saban. Alabama basketball, man. You kidding me? These guys have been incredible this year. So, yeah, give me the Tide. The Tide rolls in the SEC tournament. I know you're not picking them just because of this whole situation, but I got to go with head over heart. I mean, obviously I want Mizzou to win, but got to pick Alabama here to win the SEC championship.
Yeah, I'm going for a deep cut. I'm going Jerome style on this pick. I'm going with the Arkansas Razorbacks to win the SEC tournament.
What?
They have a great backcourt set with Ricky Council IV, Anthony Black, and then Nick Smith Jr., who's really talented. He's only played in 12 games this season.
What place were they in the standings in the SEC?
They were 9th.
They were 9th. That's what I thought.
Yeah, they've got a game against Auburn tonight, I believe, or tomorrow. I am going with the Razorbacks. I mean, one thing that I look at this time of year.
I
Yeah,
do like
Musselman, really
Musselman.
good
Good
coach. One
coach.
thing that I like to look at, KenPom. This is something I
Oh
use
boy. Here we
considerably
go.
when it comes
Here
time to
we
make my
go.
tournament picks. But KenPom has Arkansas as the 19th best team in the country. They do have Alabama at 3, so I am going off the board in a number of ways for an
Sure.
upset pick. But this is a team that offensive and defensive efficiency numbers are pretty solid. A pretty decent team all around, play at a fast tempo. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to slow down Alabama, who plays at the second highest tempo in the country. That's going to be a big, big differentiator because the more talent you have, the more possessions you want, because mathematically your talent's going to bear out more over time. But I'm going with a little bit of an upset here. I kind of like Tennessee, but of course, losing their starting point guard who contributed a significant amount to their offense, that's just a tough thing to adjust to at any point in the season, let alone a couple weeks before your conference tournament. So I did like Tennessee initially. I'm going with a big upset in Arkansas, though, to make some noise in the
Wow.
SEC tournament.
Okay. All right,
Going
Tom.
going to the Big 12. Yeah, never say I'm not bold. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm not. In the Big 12, I think, there's a big two to pick from. You can go rock chalk if you'd like to, but for me, I'm going to go with hook 'em horns. I'm going to take Texas out of the Big 12. What are you thinking on that?
I want to pick Texas. I hate doing this as a Mizzou fan, but I'm going to pick Kansas. And
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched as much college hoops as normal. I look, there's going to be some upsets, but I'm going very chalk in my picks because I'm looking at this as who is the most likely. So it is kind of a two-team race. But by the way, Kansas State and Baylor and Texas were all within 2 games of each other, not far behind Kansas in the Big 12. So Kansas State can win as well. Baylor's won a lot in recent years. They can win as well. I think it's Kansas. They're playing great basketball right now. I know they just lost to Texas in their last game, but that was a road game. Kansas also beat Texas in Lawrence. So KU's won 7 of the last 8. I like Jalen Wilson and Grady Dick as a 1-2 duo. They're a very solid duo. Both can get hot at any moment. I know a lot of the players are gone from last year's national title team, but there's some that are back, and that culture kind of remains. After you win a national championship, that winning culture sticks there within the team. So I think that culture and that experience is going to lead to Kansas winning the Big 12 title. It pains me to say it as a Mizzou grad, but got to pick KU in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, there's just some things that I cannot bring myself to do, much to my detriment. It's why I didn't pick Kansas last year, even though they, in hindsight, had the cleanest, easiest path to getting to the Final Four and the title game.
Pick? I think we both were wrong last year.
I'm trying to went with like a 2 or a 3 seed. I'd have to look at that bracket.
I can't remember who I picked either. Yeah.
It didn't work out. I think that was like the bracket that had Iowa as a 5 seed. That was a really common pick that was coming out.
I can't remember.
Maybe that was Kentucky. Maybe Kentucky was the 2 seed on that side.
Oh, they got upset.
I think so.
I think I had like Arizona, and they got upset also.
And Purdue was in that.
My pick was really. 2 years ago, my bracket was really good. Last year, not the best.
This year, I think it's going to be a lot of the same because there's I don't know. None of these teams are good enough, I don't think, to be clear-cut favorites. So I think there's going to be a lot of red splashed across a lot of brackets. But of course, none in our ACC tournament picks, of course. I'm going with the Miami Hurricanes, who took a share of the ACC title, finished the season on a pretty strong note. I mean, they had a 1-point loss against Florida State, but before that, it'd been a minute since they lost. They had some really good games. I'm going with the Hurricanes. I think this is a pretty strong team up and down. Where are you going on this one? Are you going more traditional blue blood out of the ACC?
Sort of. I mean, I guess they're blue blood-ish. I'm not going Duke or UNC. Virginia's kind of becoming, I mean, they're not a blue blood, but they're, in recent years, at least, a more traditional school. I'm going to go Virginia, who, by the way, you mentioned Miami finished with a share of the title. Tied with Virginia. Virginia does not have necessarily one great score. They don't have a very flashy team. What they do have is a lot of balance. and great defense. I hate watching Virginia basketball. It's boring to watch. It's slow tempo. It's grinded out. But you look at the ACC this year, there's not a single great team. No one's ranked in the top 10, I don't think. It's a pretty wide open field in the ACC. Actually, I'm going to pull up the rankings just to make sure. Here on my phone, NCAA rankings. No one's in the top 10, right? I'm
Nope.
right. I think Virginia at 13, Miami at 14 are the closest to the top 10. So there's not a single great team in the ACC this year. Duke is down. UNC is way down. So what is there to talk about consistency? Well, defense is consistent. Defense travels in a tournament setting. They won't have enough points to win the NCAA tournament, but in a weak ACC, I like Virginia's boring style. I like their depth in defense. Give me Virginia to win the ACC tournament. Well coached,
Yep.
too, by the way. Well coached.
Of course, yeah. So that's ACC. Really quickly, UNC probably, I mean, if they don't win the tournament, they have to at least make the final with the season that they had. You want to talk about winning culture?
Yeah.
In the title game last year for the NCAA tournament as an 8 seed and really faltering. So it kind of goes to show a little bit of, how variable the NCAA tournament can be.
Well, UNC, by the way, Tom, is on the bubble right now. They could make the tournament, actually, because I'll be honest with you, is the NCAA tournament going to leave UNC out? I'm not sure. They're 19-12, 11-9 in ACC. They have one good win this year against Virginia, but reading on Lunardi, I think they're first 4 out right now. I think they're literally like the first or second team out. They're so close that I don't think they need to make the ACC championship to win. They'll beat Boston College in their game coming up, and then they will play Virginia in the second round. If they play Virginia close, they still might get in the tournament. It's UNC. For them, the key is to give the ball to Armando Bacot, though. They've got a really good big man down low. Caleb Love, while talented, takes too many shots. His field goal percentage, Tom, atrocious. Under 40%. Caleb Love, give the ball to Armando Bacot, bro. That's why you guys are struggling. Feed the big man. Look, I know in the NBA game, it's all about threes. Brooke Lopez out there now is raining threes in the game I went to. But in the college game, you could still win with the big man down low. Purdue does it. Indiana does it. UNC should do it with Armando Bacot. I'm going to say they're going to make the tournament. I really am. I think they're going to lose to Virginia, and they'll still get in because the committee does not want to leave UNC out. There'll be a 12 seed. They'll get one of those 12 seeds in the play-in games.
Or that 11 play-in.
Or that 11.
Yeah.
Tar Heels get one of those play-in spots for me. They probably shouldn't, but they will because of the name.
Yeah. Name brand is everything, and no school perhaps has exhibited that more over the history of college basketball than UCLA, a program that has had sustained stretches of success in multiple decades, and this one's no exception. 27-4. I mean, they're my pick to come out of the Pac-12. Only 4 losses on the season, and for them, bad things came in twos. I mean, losing to Illinois and Baylor early on in the season as they were kind of doing, figuring some things out. That's an early point in the season where a lot of teams that may end up being really good kind of stumble along the way a bit. And then they had a couple road losses back to back against Arizona and at Arizona, at USC. But of course, avenging both of those wins in the season. So, I mean, I like the Hawkeyes. I like the story of having both in the men's and women's bracket. You've got the siblings. You could have, I think UCLA actually is the only school that already has a brother-sister duo that won both NCAA titles for the men's and women's bracket, and the Hawkeyes could do it again.
And on the men's side, Jaime Jaquez is fantastic. 17.5 points, 8 rebounds. Actually, you look at Tyler Campbell, too, who runs the show at the point guard. Those 2 guys have been there the last 2 seasons on a very good NCAA tournament team. UCLA, Tom, of any conference tournament, I feel the best about them in the Pac-12. Their 2 losses, 18-2, were against the other 2 best teams in the league. They just beat Arizona last time out, more modernly. They're absolutely rolling right now in conference. They've won 10 in a row. I actually love this UCLA team so much that they're my favorite to win the whole tournament. And I know that's not bold. They're number 2 in the country, whatever. But I look at all these teams off the top of my head. I like UCLA winning the whole thing. So how could I not pick them to win the Pac-12 if they're my NCAA champion? Greatly coached team, tons of experience, tons of great guard play. They've got everything. Give me the Bruins.
Yeah, out in the Big East, the newly formed or semi-newly formed Big East, we've got the UConn Huskies, and I think Marquette are the top 2 ranked teams in that conference. Marquette
but Xavier
at 6,
was really
and
good
then
too.
Xavier is down at 15. So you can go with a couple of different options, but for me, I'm going to go with the UConn Huskies. I mean, I know guard play is significant when it comes to tourney time, but whenever you can have an advantage in the post like you have with Adama Sanogo for the Huskies, I think he's a phenomenal player, leads them in field goal percentage, making almost 59% of his shots. And here's the key thing, makes 78% of his free throws as well. And that's something that's going to be significant because he is going to be getting a lot of contact in these games. In a tournament setting, you have to be able to make your free throws and able to advance. And how often do we see the big man who's capable of putting up double doubles, but then has issues at the foul line, and you either have to take him out of the game at some point. You can leave Sanogo in the entire time. I think that's a huge advantage for UConn. And as much as I really, really like Shaka Smart, going back to his VCU days, getting all the way to the Final Four with the Rams and running that just absolutely hellacious defense, I like the Huskies just a little bit better than the Marquette Golden Eagles, the 1 seed to win in the conference this year.
I like Marquette, 6th ranked team in the country, won the conference in the regular season, 17-3. You hit it. Guard play, Cam Jones, one of the best guards in the country for Marquette. Shaka Smart, he is a phenomenal head coach. He knows how to do it. I mean, Marquette is 6th in the country. Think about that, Tom. 6th in the entire country. I don't think they're even ranked that high with Dwayne Wade or Jimmy Butler. This is as good of a team as Marquette has had in a while. I think they've got the best team in the Big East. They've probably got the best coach in that tournament in Shaka Smart. The best guard for me probably in Cam Jones. They've got all the pieces. Marquette wins the Big East tournament.
Sounds good. I think that covers up everything that we have for college basketball conference play. Of course, with Selection Sunday coming out, we will have a full breakdown on the NCAA bracket with some keys and tips to filling out your own bracket at home for larger and smaller pools. So really looking forward to this phenomenal content that's going to be coming up next week. Common betting locks. Let's hit the recap.
Weird week that I beat you this week. You were under 500. So I was 2-1. Big week for me. I had the Cavs +5 at the Celtics. Normally, I'm the guy who loses a line by half a point or by a point. I am the king of bad beats. This time I got a good win. Cavs losing by 4, covering by 5 at the Celtics. I got Lakers Thunder over 227.5. I was correct. Lakers winning 123-117, 240 points. I actually won about $50 betting sports that night. Would have won about 250 had the Blazers not barbecued me. Had a 4-way parlay, hit all the early ones. Blazers -1.5 against the Pelicans. Horrible fourth quarter. Pelicans winning 121-110. Rare bad week for you, seems like, over the last year or two. 1-2 for Tom. Grizzlies -1.5 versus the Rockets in the first half. They actually won big, but only won 47-44 in the first half. You had Bulls -2 first half over the Pistons. That was correct. Bulls up 15 at the half. I think they barely hung on in that game. I can't remember. They either barely hang on or they blow the lead. I think they barely hung on at the end despite up 15. Colin Morikawa, 20th or better at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, did not make the cut. So you missed that one. What do you got this week for betting locks?
Barbecued me bad. I have, let's see, I'm going to go a little bit bold. I'm going to give not one, but 2 plus money Castleman picks. As conference tournament season, I'm going to go with a couple conference winners. You can get at +115 Grambling to win the SWAC conference. For context, the next favorite is Elkhorn State at plus 350. So you've got a pretty big delta between those two teams. Give me Grambling to come out of the Southwest Athletic Conference. And then also give me San Diego State to win the Mountain West. You can get that at plus 150. So if you're feeling good about them and want some value,
I like that one.
Them. I think Boise is next.
I've got them winning too. I think that's my pick, right? I know we have our pick'em thing.
Yeah, we've got our pick'em of between you, myself, and Drew. For whatever reason, I have lost the Big West tournament, but that's my pick to win them, and I think that they're going to be able to do that fairly handily. I think Boise State is somewhere around the 3 to 350 range. And then, you know what? Since I'm going so bold to say that Arkansas is going to win the SEC tournament, they can't do that unless they beat Auburn. Give me Arkansas plus 1 against Auburn. I think that's minus 115, your standard point line.
I like it. So I got one conference tournament basketball game. This line did not make a lot of sense. Oklahoma State, I've got a -1 over Oklahoma. Oklahoma State won both games this season, won by 10 at Oklahoma and 16 at home against Oklahoma State. The Sooners are last place in the Big 12 standings. Oklahoma State won 3 more conference games, had a better overall record. It's a neutral floor game. I don't know how Oklahoma State is only a 1-point favorite. So -1, they should win by 2 or more. No problem. Won by 10 and 16 earlier this season. I'm going to go Bulls Nuggets over 225 points. The Bulls team is terrible at defense. I mean, terrible at defense. Pretty okay at offense, at least. Nuggets, by the way, so many great scores against that Bulls defense. They'll have a field day scoring the ball. Last time these two teams played, 126 to 103. That was 239 points. I need 225, Tom. I feel pretty good about that one. And lastly, I'm going to go with the team I don't particularly like, but I'm going to pick the Clippers -2.5 over the Raptors. They've got a better roster. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, the 2 best players on the court probably in that game. Clippers are at home. Toronto's a bad road team. LA should win by 3 or more tonight.
All right, fantastic. Well, I don't have anything for our trivia segment. Common, you got anything you want to throw out there?
We'll skip trivia this week, just 1 week. I know we both got a little time crunch here. You've got work coming up. Wednesday, Saturday are my off days. I've got PSG soccer coming up. Let's go beat Bayern Munich. Let's go Messi. But let's do statements of the week. What do you got for me?
To be honest, I don't know if I really have one. I mean, I think we covered a lot of things where I guess my statement would be that Baltimore and Lamar Jackson, it would be in both of their best interest to reach some sort of long-term agreement. And part of this is fomented by the fact that Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent. And that's something that I cannot stress enough to anybody who is in a high stakes position, like being an athlete or being an entertainer, working on some negotiation for a media company, whether you're an on-air talent or something to that effect. The way that these meetings kind of go down between teams and agents is that the first couple of offers from a team are kind of sort of insulting because they're trying to get you in at the lowest price point that you can. And that can get misconstrued when you are representing yourself as, hey, I do all these wonderful things for this team. I'm really involved in my community. What are you saying that you're lowballing me type of thing? Having an agent smooths a lot of edges and keeps things from becoming personal. I don't work in a high enough profile job, of course, where I would have I would need some sort of representation between myself and my employer, thank goodness. But it's the sort of thing where
Lamar does, though.
I understand it absolutely feels awful that you're cutting a check to somebody when you sign that contract and it says you're getting X% of this deal. And you might think to yourself, I don't need you to do that. I'm making so much money. Like, I know what I'm worth. Why do I need, I can cut out the middleman, so to speak, when these agents are filling a really, really vital role.
Yeah.
So it helps keep things from getting personal. It helps both the team and the player focus on the things that they want to focus on. Hey, we want to be a really good team. You want to be a really good player. let somebody else kind of handle that money in the middle. So I think it's in both of their interests to reach some sort of long-term accord, because the longer this drags on, whether it's on the mutually or the non-exclusive tag for the franchise, whether or not there's an offer sheet or trade rumors or whatever, things are going to be a lot cleaner once these two sides work out a longer term deal, a la the New York Giants and Daniel Jones type of situation. So it's in both sides' interest to get a job done, to find some sort of compromise. The sooner they do that, the happier everybody's going to be.
It's funny that you say that, because my statement is actually about the same topic. I know I kind of hinted at this earlier, but obviously some folks watch different parts of the show, and I just want to put it out there, make it more obvious. Sports teams need to stand up to players. Look, I get it. At some point, the players run the show, but these players are getting away with too much lately. They're getting too much money. They're getting everything they want. I love what the Ravens are doing. The fact that they stood up to Lamar Jackson and they told him, look, man, we're not giving you everything you're asking. This is what you're going to get. And if you're not happy, then too bad. That's why I love what the Ravens are doing with the franchise tag. I love that it's the lower franchise tag as well. And I hate what the Giants did. The Giants could have told Daniel Jones, look, man, there is not any team out there that would pay you 4 years, $160 million to be their starting quarterback. No other team in their right mind would, like, if he was a free agent right now, Tom, no one would pay that much.
I mean, Derek Carr, 6 years older, got almost the identical same deal. I think somebody would have paid that money.
You think so?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know.
Somebody would say 26 years old, former top 10 pick.
You got to stand up to the players. You can't, which is weird, because most employees in the world are, quite frankly, taking advantage of their companies. Vast majority of jobs out there, it's the employee who is facing the hardship. But in the pros, the employees run the organizations in many ways. So it's kind of like a weird situation. I do like what the Ravens are doing. They don't want to be forced into a deal with the guy who's been hurt. I like them standing up to Lamar Jackson and giving him that franchise tag. I think that just about does it for us tonight. I do have one real quick salute. Paul Gasol, name hanging in the Raptors for the Lakers. The perfect number 2. A guy who knows he's okay with being number 2. A guy who was a great player, a great person, great number 2 to Kobe in L.A., fantastic player. That's who you want as your number 2. A guy who knows he's number 2. He's not trying to be number 1. He knows when he was number 1, he wasn't good enough to win a ring. As a number 2 guy, he did get the ring. Shout out to Gasol, who's huge in the international game as well. One of the most influential basketball players of our generation. Speaking of basketball, so much basketball coming up next week. It'll be our March Madness tournament special. Depending on big news, we may or may not hit on NBA. We may hit on some NFL free agency. But for the most part, the weeks to come, it'll be March Madness heavy. Selection Sunday on Sunday. Cannot wait to make our predictions, Tom. I'll see you next week. All the listeners and viewers, see ya next week.